Malcolm Hoenlein is with us. Time for the weekly update. Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. Mr. Hoenlein, welcome back to JM in the AM.
Thank you. It's good to be with you. Good to hear you so strong.
Thank you. We're getting there, as they say, you know. And Baruch Hashem, we're celebrating a Mazel Tov, as I shared with you and with the audience. And as you always remind us, there's nothing more important than transferring and transmitting everything that's about our heritage and tradition to the next generation. So Bezrat Hashem, all of our families should continue to grow.
That's the greatest answer to all our enemies, is that we need Jewish children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren who will continue the fight and will, Bezrat Hashem, overcome all of the challenges that we had and we will discuss.
Yeah, amen to that. All right, here's the rumor. The rumor is that the Prime Minister of Israel asked, begged, strongly suggested to the President of the United States to hold off on any type of military attack in Iran. Tell us what you think about the validity of this rumor.
Okay, so again, I think your caveat that it's what I think. The Prime Minister has not spoken to this, and other Israeli officials with whom I've spoken have give some credence to the reports, and the basis can be several. First, preparation. America needed more time to build up its presence, and now that we have the aircraft carrier coming back to the region with all of the support ships, the destroyers that come with it, the added capabilities, which are very critical. We had no aircraft carriers in the region. There were several around Venezuela and South America. There were a couple around China, and a few were in dry dock, so there were none available. Now, the presence is being established as we speak. It doesn't mean that nothing could have been done or they couldn't have done everything. In fact, with the existing capabilities that we have 30,000 troops in the region, we have capacity in Air Force bases, in Doha, the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. So we have a lot of capabilities, and I'm not sure how much it would have taken to effectuate the result. But I think now they're still defining the result. I think the pressure also came from some of the Gulf states for fear of retaliation. There's also fear that after seeing what happened in Syria and in somewhat to some degree also South America with Venezuela, but more importantly the uprising in Syria, the replacement of the regime, that a lot of the traditional regimes are afraid that a successful overthrow there in Iran would also activate their citizens against the government. I think several are pretty confident, and I think several feel shaky about it. You know, Qatar is a country who only 10% of the population are Qataris or in the Emirates or in other countries, and specifically in Saudi Arabia, where we see a lot of internal dissension. You see the king reemerging as much more conservative or more a reflection of the past. We've seen even some of the police, monitoring the dress and other things emerging. So I think there's a battle going on internally in a lot of these countries, and they're afraid that toppling the regime in Iran will then activate others. Well, and remember that, I just want to say for people's background that Iran is not a unitary country. It's less than 50% Farsi. It's more than 50%, 51%, I think, Azeri, 30 million, Baluchi, 12 million, Ahwaz, Arabs, Kurds, everything else, Christians, of course, Alawites, Baha'i, that are in the country. And it's a huge country. It's 90 million people. It's, the population is 9 times Israel. And the landmass is much more than 9 times that of Israel. And so we can't look for simplistic solutions. And I think Netanyahu, if he'd said it, did it because, number one, the preparations that took place in Israel, although earlier in the week they already had moved missiles around Jerusalem, missile defense systems, and in the center of the country, they shifted troops. There were a lot of preparatory steps that were taken. So I don't know that it's the defense of Israel that was the big issue. I think they looked at it as a regional thing. And if you don't have somebody to take the place, this is the really critical issue,
right?
That if chaos could lead to a worse situation, not a better one.
So
we know the executions are continuing. We know that the Basij have not defected, or the IRGC. We haven't seen mass defections, and that's the signal you look for to know that the regime is falling and the people are switching sides.
All right, lots to unpack here. So a couple of questions. First of all, based on what you just said then, can we conclude that the 12-day attack, the American military action against the Iranian nuclear facilities, can we then conclude that likely had more cooperation from the Middle Eastern countries than what the United States is enjoying right now? In other words, if they're worried or if they're being contacted by certain countries that this is not a good idea or not a good time to do this, can we then assume that back then there was a lot more cooperation and more enthusiasm for the move?
Yes, and I think first that what happened on the 12-day war set the stage for this, and not just America, the American-Israel war with Iran,
right.
It degraded their abilities. They still do not have air defense. Israel and the United States can fly over Tehran if they want. It did not destroy completely their capacity. They rebuilt some of their missile capacity, and if they launch even a couple hundred missiles, if you don't have the network in place, and remember the Jordanian Air Force helped, there were Gulf states that helped in the defense, Saudi Arabia included, and we're not sure that would exist today. Do they all want the regime out? Everybody wants it out. Are they threatened by it? Yes. Would they feel relieved? Would it change the region dramatically? Because Hamas, Hezbollah, which is the enemy of almost all of them except, say, Qatar and Turkey,
right.
Would be, you pull the rug out completely. As much as they are diminished, this would be a much greater blow to them.
And is the target confusing to the casual observer, right? I watch the news. To the casual observer, we're not attacking or threatening to attack a nuclear facility. We're not even attacking or threatening to attack any type of specific military installation. And we're certainly not suggesting, I don't think, that like Venezuela, we're walking in to take out the leadership, and drag them out of the country. Is part of it that it's confusing what the target actually is and what a presence militarily by the U.S. and Iran might actually accomplish?
Yes, no, because you said a lot of parts there that are really key to the overall puzzle. The target is not, it would be the missiles, not the nuclear program, which is pretty much set back, but would not be the immediate necessity because they're not going to launch a nuclear weapon, but they can launch a lot of missiles, and specifically at Israel. And it could be, a Hail Mary at the end if they think they're going down, that they go down with a blaze of glory so that they get written up in Islamic history as having done so much damage to the Jewish state. But so it's the picking of the targets. That Israel could have taken out, during the 12-day war, they were told not to, I think, and maybe came to the own conclusion not to. He has 17 bunkers in which he is hiding. His son, Mushtaba, has 6 bunkers. They move them constantly from one to another. So it's not that they're just walking on the street and you can knock them off. Although they are vulnerable like everybody else. Yes, we would have less support regionally. We would have but you have less of a target because you don't have to knock out the air forces and all that stuff now. And the consequences are the key thing about how would you maintain the stability of the country, maybe by having a consortium government, with representation from all the different sectors coming together in some way. There are many attempts at this. We've been working with many people inside Iran over the years, or experts on Iran, former officials, top officials of Iran. None of them have simple answers to this. And Reza Pahlavi, which the son of the Shah, that they put forward, doesn't have universal appeal. He could be an interim chief executive or something, but he's not the ultimate leader, and I don't think he positions himself as that. So I don't remember all the parts of what you said, but it's...
bunkers or no bunkers, is the leader of Iran going to stay in Iran?
Look, he's 86 years old, 87 years old. He's sick. I don't know that he... he's not going to flee. I don't think he's going to... I mean, he could seek asylum, they say, in Russia, certainly for his son, whom he's trying to protect. And if you notice, the son is very low-key. He wanted him as a successor. I think the Ayatollah is still exerting a lot of leadership, a lot of the pressure. And like the King of Saudi Arabia that everybody wrote off and said he's out of it, it's clear that he's not, and that he's playing more and more significant a role in decisions. Saudi Arabia, what to me, all of the side developments, the fact that Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Turkey are talking about this joint pact coming under Pakistan's nuclear umbrella, but shifting alliances that could have longer-term consequences, especially for American interests in the region, let alone Israel's and the Abraham Accords, that you would start seeing groups break up. Everybody wants Iran government to change. They want, and Iran could become a very powerful ally of Israel. You still see Israeli flags at the demonstrations, and it's not Jews carrying them. There's a report of this wonderful woman surgeon in Kermashin who was executed because she demonstrated with American Israeli flags, and she was hung by the government. So the talk that nobody is dying and they're not being killed. There are body bags all over the country, the huge numbers. They're charging the families, by the way, to identify where the bodies are or where they're buried. We believe there are mass graves. We also heard reports in various places that they were burning bodies because there were so many piling up, that the number who are killed is huge, much bigger, I think, from the experts I speak to, than the figures in common in the American media.
So if everybody here is saying 2,000, you're saying you think it's a much larger
multiple, a big multiple of that, maybe 10 times that.
And how do these take place? Do the authorities and the military go to these public demonstrations and literally just start killing people, wantonly? Is that how it happens?
Exactly. They just shot him on the streets.
It's amazing in this era that we don't have more footage and more, eyewitness accounts of what's going on.
Well, remember, there's blackouts. There's no phone. There's no internet. The capacity to do it. There are pictures available that during the few hours that they are able to upload stuff, that you've seen some of it, but it's almost minimal. There's no communication between families here and their relatives there, and even if they do get them on the phone, they don't talk. And this is especially true, very sensitive for our community, that so they literally go to the demonstrations, and they brought in Afghani troops from Syria, whom they organized these special forces and sent them to Syria. They're very brutal. Basij are brutal enough, which are the domestic radical groups, but they brought in from Syria these troops to support the Iranians, and they are to shoot wantonly and kill. Some of the Basij and others are afraid too, because they know they can be identified and could suffer consequence. These people have no limitations, and they're just paid in to come in brutally and kill in October 7th fashion. And there are rapes. There's all sorts of torturous things happening. The prisons, the morgues and the hospitals are overflowing with victims. Like, we don't know yet what happened last night. Again, because there's an overall blackout of information. When people are really intimidated and afraid to talk.
When you heard the President of the United States yesterday indicate that the executions are stopping, and that things are calming down, etc. I mean, what do you think? That some people think it was a ruse, that he's trying to distract everybody from the fact that they're really going in. Others felt like he had to walk things back and cover himself if in fact they decided not to continue with his pretty harsh threat. What were your impressions of his statement?
Well, first of all, the executions may have been held back, and certainly the few names that were made public of people, this young guy who was supposed to be executed. So it may be true that they held off on that, but you don't know what's happening in the provinces because there's nobody reporting them on, not on the demonstrations, not on the executions, not on the real developments on the ground in a lot of these places. And you know that I think I reported here in late December, they were executing one person every 2.5 hours.
Right.
And these are government executions. So you're talking about thousands of people who were executed by the government during the year, in addition to all of the murders and everything else that was going on. And that number then shot up dramatically as the conflict and the street demonstrations started. But clearly they were given the order to shoot to kill, and they killed a lot. And so you can see how sensitive the whole river to the sea crowd and all the people at Columbia demonstrated,
all of a sudden,
and all the universities on fire, because these are young people being killed wantonly for nothing but trying to seek democracy and freedom. And you see the hypocrisy and the fact that there was no sincerity in those demonstrations that were all manipulated, that nothing is happening now.
So what do you think of the president's statement? I mean, do you think it was in fact
I'm sorry.
No problem.
The president has a habit of feigning things, of creating, which is something, by the way, an accepted tradition in Islam, taqiyya, where you're allowed to lie for purposes of advancing Islam goals. And the president, has shown this ability. The problem is he's really on the line. We several times, the United States, failed the people of Iran when they demonstrated in the Green Revolution and previously when they took to the streets in the hundreds of thousands. And by the way, chanted the same thing. We will not die for Iran. We will not die for Gaza. We will not die for Lebanon, meaning Hamas. We will die for Iran, meaning against the government. And they were chanting it again. And so the people are hearing the president, and they kept saying, we want to hear from the president, we want to hear from Netanyahu, both of whom did issue statements. But the president said, go, take over your institutions, continue, help is on the way, I'm coming, we hear you. And they felt encouraged to do it. They may have done it anyway. And I think the president didn't just say it, I think he meant it at the time too. I think he may still mean it, and it's just looking at strategic capacity that you don't want to do something that's going to fail, because that will make things worse. And you don't want to create, as I said, a situation where members of the IRGC who are even more radical will take over. And you want to make sure that there's the capacity for some sort of transition, as they did in Venezuela. If you look at it, it's remarkable that the leader's taken out and seems stability, and they're moving and changing policy. I mean, that's what should be effectuated in Iran, and and maybe that is why the warnings that came from others and the president's hesitancy. Although, just look at the movement of equipment and troops and stuff to see that maybe they believe they need a greater capacity in order to offset the Iran's strength. They are a strong country. They have a big army. They have a big regular army, and then they have the IRGC, which is a second army, and they both have navies. Both groups have navies, and both have capacities.
Understood. It's America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program, heard on listeners-sponsored digital radio. Around the world by NachumSegal.com and the Nachum Segal Network, and of course the beloved NSN app. Support our annual campaign, especially if you enjoy our programming and all of our conversations, fjbunity.org, fjbunity.org. So this week, I don't know how many times I heard from people, should I cancel my trip to Israel? Should I postpone my trip to Israel? This airline is about to announce they're not flying to Israel. Frankly, Malcolm, and I don't know if you agree with this, but you pay careful attention to the news. I don't think any airline actually stopped flying. Am I right about that? And what would you have said to somebody who brought up the topic of postponing a trip?
I don't see any reason to postpone a trip. If something's bad, the airlines will cancel. El Al will not. So book El Al. You're more likely that your flight will be continued. Could there be a disruption of service? Absolutely. It can happen.
But none of the majors have announced that yet, correct?
From New Jersey, some that were turned back, but it could be for mechanical purpose reasons. The Europeans did cancel the flights. that did take place. Lufthansa, others have it moved right away, which was quite surprising. But so yes, there could be interruptions to service, but there's certainly no reason in Israel to not to go and not to enjoy it, and be assured you'll be safe.
What was the purpose of Prime Minister Netanyahu reaching out to President Putin to discuss the situation in Iran?
Because Russia is still an important player. It has influence. It has a presence still in Syria and other places, and has the relationship with Iran. And Netanyahu has, or feels he has a good relationship with Putin. So having him online, and I think that he spoke to other leaders as well, is a natural thing to do, and it's important to, first of all, to get a reading of where Russia's at. Russia's not in a capacity to do much for Iran. You know, all the drones that are flying against Ukraine, they're supplied to Russia by Iran. They're selling the oil for Russia, and you know, the interlocking relationship, the joint exercises that Russia, China, and Iran do. So their relationship is pretty intimate. So I think it makes a lot of sense that Netanyahu would speak to Putin about it.
Where is Mahmoud Abbas at the moment?
I think in a hospital, actually, in Ramallah.
And you've pointed out more than once he's over 85 years old, correct?
Yes, he is.
And he will have no role likely in the future of Gaza, especially if President Trump's plan continues to move forward.
I don't even know about future role. It's a day-to-day situation. He's old. They talk about potential successors. He has named some people who would probably be at least interim, somebody to fill in. But he, he's not well, and he's in his the 24th year of his 4-year term, or 23 years, whatever. He's not an elected official. He doesn't enjoy the confidence of the people, and the feeling always is that he's better than the alternative.
Right.
But I think at some point that's no longer true. All
right, so now let's get to the plan, because the president did make some public statements about the Gaza peace plan and the committee that's being set up, et cetera, and you're also reading reports that it's going to take 7 years to remove all the rubble from Gaza that was caused by this war, et cetera. So now, and I also know there's a commitment to wait for the last remains of the last hostage to come back to Israel. So what is different now with everything that Witkoff and the president said this week about the Gaza plan than, I don't know, a week or two ago?
Nothing that I know of. Again, we have to study the documents very, very carefully to see if there were changes. But for one, they're naming names of the people who would serve on an interim committee. The naming of Maladenov as the coordinator or chairman. He is a good guy, a friend. He worked for the United Nations. He was the Middle East coordinator, but he was he was a friend of many of ours, and I think he's a balanced and good choice for this job, because you also need the support of the Arab countries and others. You can't just appoint somebody favorable to Israel. The question is implementation. Yeah. So moving ahead, you can't have the next stage really being implemented until the last body is returned. That's a pledge, a promise that has to be kept. And I think Netanyahu has every intention of doing that. And the families and others are still petitioning for that. And I think the U.S. wants to see it. But I think they feel that if it's stalemated too long, we're not going to be able to move it and to have any lifeline there or appearance of a lifeline for others to not intercede or to lose the opportunity ultimately. And because he knows he's being measured by all of these things, and they go out on a limb and announce things before I think that they're perhaps matured enough. So this is the announcements I think are meant to build up pressure, but I think the administration is supporting Israel about the need to get the return of the last body and disarmament of Hamas as a condition.
And that condition, I mean, I don't know if you would have agreed a month or two ago because Hamas was making a major issue of the fact that that's never going to happen. Has any of that changed over the last couple of months? I mean, is there really an honest hope for complete demilitarization of Hamas in Gaza?
Well, I think we're seeing remilitarization in some instances, that Israel is cleaning up the area under its control, but it's got a very small percentage of the population across the yellow line, which Israel controls. And we know that inside the areas, some of the tunnels are still being discovered, and they still find stockpiling of weapons. The belief is that they're bringing in new weapons. They're certainly talking about it, so it's the same true with Hezbollah. And a lot of people in Israel have concerns or confidence in anything, believing that, we're going to face the same circumstances as before. I do not think that Israel will let that happen. It can't let that happen. If, as you know, a lot of the buildings, there's huge destruction. It'll take maybe decades to really rebuild. But signs of, like around Rafah, where they want to start construction, maybe that sends a more positive signal. But, everything can work on both sides of the equation. And right now, the first thing is got to get back the body and disarmament of Hamas has to take place. And the de-radicalization of the population, too, is very critical for the longer-term ability to live together.
And that could take a long time.
A very long time.
Back to Iran for a second. UN Security Council, is there any activity this week with everything, all the executions, et cetera, going on in Iran?
There are people who brought up, and the Israeli ambassador spoke about it, but action, no.
And, of course...
So they have the Russian and Chinese vetoes there, so...
Oh, right. Good point. But in addition to that, I mean, just some type of resolution, because we know what would happen, obviously, if Israel was perceived as the aggressor in this case. But
they are blaming Israel, of course, and you saw the foreign minister of Iran said it was Zionists who were shooting and Zionists who were agitating, and that it's all foreign terrorist-led, meaning Israel. It didn't take long for them to make the shift, and of course, people believe it. You have all the crazies in the United States and on the internet and others, and you have to understand, when you repeat something often enough, people believe it, and we're already getting feedback that people are repeating the charge that Israel was behind this, and of course, it was not.
Unbelievable. Also, I'm a bit confused about what happened with Israel and the UN agencies this week. They separated themselves from specific, committees or sub-organizations of the UN. You know how the UN works. What exactly happened this week?
So, by the way, the United States also separated itself from a number of UN agencies, which are wasting money and working against American interests, Israel's interests, and others. And Israel, in particular, took action against and withdrew from a number of the agencies. The Secretary General, for instance, is threatening to sue them for pulling out of UNRWA, which, as you know, many members of or number of members of UNRWA were involved on October 7th, and it's meant to serve the Palestinian people, but it's a propaganda machine. We saw how much activity. We know the textbooks that UNRWA gives out and all of the violations, the constant violations. So Israel took action against a number of the agencies pulling out. Problem is, when you don't have a presence, it's harder to respond and to monitor what is going on. But I think you just reached the point, and I think the United States and many others, a lot of Europeans who have hesitancy about where the UN is going. But for them, it's a vehicle, and it doesn't cost them that much. America pays for a quarter of the whole budget. And I think Israel is saying also, why should we support agencies? All the reports, I think during the week since we talked, that Israel cut off a couple dozen aid agencies from having permission to go in because they were aiding and abetting the terrorists, and they were not serving the people. All of them together made up less, including Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, which made a big, a lot of headlines in Europe and elsewhere. All together, they were less than 1% of the aid. Less than 1%. So all I'm saying, the aid, the people are going to starve. That first of all, there's more aid inside Gaza than they could possibly use. They throw out a lot of it, waste it, and of course Hamas takes it, steals it, sells it. So all these stories, and you think the media, after all that they've seen, if there was an ounce of integrity, they would report this properly. But all these agencies, many of whose members were involved in supporting terrorism, if not directly involved, get a free ride, and they distort and misrepresent this reality. Israel is letting in so much stuff. The problem is once it gets in there, it can't be distributed. It's hijacked. It's terrible.
Unbelievable. Finally, Malcolm, these stories that we keep hearing of suicides among those soldiers who are involved in this war, PTSD, and how serious a subject it is right now in Israel, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, unlike prior major wars in Israel, not a criticism, was a different era. You're very much in touch with government officials. Would you, in fact, say at this point that the government of Israel is taking these situations very, very seriously?
It's a crisis. It's very serious. There are, I would say, many thousands who are trying to get help, mental help, the various syndromes that we read about are present, and the people who served, and remember, people who had served 300-400 days and witnessed terrible things and stuff. It's natural that it would happen, and Israel has to devote and is devoting more and more resources. They absolutely take it seriously. The suicide rate, which, of course, every one of them gets a lot of publicity. We shouldn't exaggerate it, but there is a mental health crisis, I think, and that there has to be a lot more resources, and American organizations, others should be helping in these cases to build up the capacity for counseling, for treatment. It's not going to be short term. Some of these things take years to work out. But it's a tragedy when you read the story of a young person who takes their own life. It's one thing you die in war. It's another thing when you die after the war.
Yes, very sad. And to conclude on a positive note, as we know from this week's Parsha, the one above is always there for us. He's always there to protect us. Am Yisrael Chai. And please God, everybody who needs some type of help, especially in the situations we just discussed, will in fact discover it very quickly, please God.
And look at Israel's enemies are falling one after another. They will fall, and we have to be strong. We have to get through this period and help the people of Israel get through it, and could emerge from this a whole different Middle East.
Amen to that. Thank you, Malcolm. Have a wonderful Shabbos. We'll speak. Hopefully next week. If not, you'll know why. But hopefully, if not, then it's.
Thank
you so much.
The whole audience is giving you mazel tov.
I appreciate that. Big extended family, and of course, Malcolm's referring to the fact that Kayla and Binyamin Segal had a brand new baby boy last night. And I'm referring to the fact that there may be a bris. Please God, if it's on time, please God, b'shat tova, at the right time. Next Friday, and that would obviously alter our schedule. Friday morning, JM and the AM. Thanks for joining us on this Erev Shabbos Parshas Va'era, 4:34 candle lighting time in New York.